YouTube. No bright shiny lights today for this RPG video. It's not a particularly cheery topic. I was looking at a game last night, just poking on my phone. There was something on TV. It wasn't really holding my attention all that much. We were watching an episode of something that wasn't grabbing me. And so I'm poking on my phone and on the SD card I keep there, and I've got like 33 gigs worth of gaming books on my phone. So I'm poking around, and I'm looking at kind of a take on the old school first edition Game World vibe. So they're talking about, mutant animals and people and all kinds of stuff. And I'm getting to the mutations, and I always want to see how they're handling these things differently. For the most part, it seems to be a complete and absolute port over of first edition Game World. I'm not 100% sure how they got away with that, or they thought they'd get away with it, maybe because they were putting it out for free, maybe? I'm not positive. I'm not really sure where I picked this particular thing up. But they got to the section of defects, and the defects are mixed in with the normal mutations. So they're a minority, so you're not reading as many defective mutations that exist, and a lot of the things are like, weak bones, or, your heart's half the size it's supposed to be, those kind of things. But there are other types of defects in the game, and some of them, as the title of this video probably can tell you, are literally demonizing people who are neurodivergent or mentally ill. Now, you could play up the fact that you can just say something that someone has a defect that says their intelligence is 2 points lower or 4 points lower than normal, or their charisma or their wisdom, and you don't have to get any deeper than that. Because you'll encounter species in games where, flat out, some species just aren't as smart or as wise or as charismatic, but they have other traits. I mean, look at the dwarf. Dwarves are often shown as having a lower charisma score because they are gruff. They are, no nonsense type of folks that don't put up with a lot of social niceties. That's fine. And I don't hold that against the designers. It's kind of a vibe that many of us have been, playing up for decades. Also be said, you could have gregarious dwarves and just have them be a little less dexterous if you wanted, for example. But this particular game, out and out, was calling autism a defect. Autism is a way of looking at the world different from people who are not neurodivergent. And the neurotypical folks don't seem to grasp that being neurodivergent isn't a defect. It is just looking at the world in a different way, processing the information that comes in and what you do with it when you have it. That's not necessarily should be considered a defect. I have a number of people that I have friends with and who watch my videos who are autistic, who are neurodivergent. I don't think any less of them for that, any more than I think of someone as being better because they're neurotypical. And I make an effort to do that. And one of the things I'm not going to do is bake into a set of rules that an autistic person is broken. Now, one of the other things they had in here was paranoia. Now, I can remember reading the paranoia defect way back when first edition, Game World first came back. And I think I first read it, was it 78 or 79? I don't remember. I'm old. And I didn't think really anything of it because it really kind of made me think of the way, a lot of television and movies and comic books handled paranoia. Of course, what I didn't realize at the time was that those medias, films and television and comic books, had conditioned me to accept a certain kind of treatment of mental illness. That it was okay to point a finger at somebody and laugh at them for being scared of something that you weren't scared of. And of course, if the person themselves suffered some form of paranoia, that was completely different. My paranoia is a real thing, but their paranoia, well, that's something we can point and laugh at. Yeah, it's funny how it works that way. And as opposed to just accepting that some people are afraid of stuff and we should respect that. And if they want to not be afraid of stuff and they would like our support, cool, we can help them if we can. I mean, obviously not everybody can help everybody, get over their particular issues if they're trying to get over them. But what we shouldn't be doing, whether we suffer ourselves from that particular type of mental illness or we don't, we shouldn't be pointing and laughing, either to hide our own weaknesses or just because we're cruel. But again, we probably shouldn't be baking that into a game. There are ways of having defects that are not punching down, that are not pointing and laughing, that are not demonizing. They're not telling neurodivergent people that they are broken. So yeah, I got to that whole point in the game when it was like, autistic people have, a defect that makes them broken. When I decided, I'm not going to be reviewing this. I'm not going to. I'm not going to tell you what the game is. Doesn't really matter. And because of that. And so I'm tired of it. Because this particular game I'm discussing wasn't written in the era of Gamma World First Edition. It is a 21st century production. I think it was made within the last 5 or 6 years, maybe the last decade at most. And yet here we are. Now you're going to say, well, the social norms of things are changing over time. Well, newsflash. It's always been wrong to point at somebody because they're mentally ill or because they're neurodivergent and make fun of them. I can remember growing up when the term retarded was just the proper way of referring to somebody. Oh, they're retarded. And then we began to realize that, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we should start treating people with respect. And as our understanding of mental illness and neurodivergence has become more complex and more comprehensive, and the definition of autism, for example, has expanded, and we've come to realize that it actually covers a heck of a lot more ground than we thought at one time. I'm liking to believe that we're getting better at this, but I know from hearing what my autistic friends and associates have told me, we're not. I may perceive it that way because I'm not neurotypical, and I'm not rather neurodivergent. And I can tell you from a person that has mental illness that the community at large, the United States and the world at large, have not gotten particularly better at respecting people's mental illness. I make a point myself to talk about my mental illness whenever the topic comes up organically. I don't introduce myself, hey, I'm James, I'm mentally ill. I don't do that. But I do talk about it. Why? Because I'm normalizing it. Just like if you look at the notes underneath this video, it's going to say my nickname, Tetsubo, and next to it, it says he, him. Why? Because even though I'm cisgender, I'm normalizing that. I want to normalize it to the point where no one will ever bat an eye when they see somebody's gender after their name. They see their gender identity after their name, and they respect it without question. It's on my business cards. Well, that's more of a social media card, it's not a business card. But I have social media cards. I carry them in my wallet. I hand them to people, and on it, it says my name, James, and next to it, it says he, him. There you go. I'm normalizing it because it should be normal. And our games should not be cruel to others just because the people that write them are not neurodivergent and maybe not mentally ill. Maybe they have grown up like I did, thinking that it was okay to make folks because they're paranoid, or make fun of folks because they're schizophrenic. That's another thing that the particular game said that was made a person broken because they're schizophrenic. Role-playing mental illness, role-playing neurodivergence baked into a game is very questionable. Now, someone who is neurodivergent or is suffering from mental illness and would like to have that reflected in how they play their character, I don't have a problem with that. And if a GM handles it with taste, I can understand why NPCs having those issues, or the way they interact with the world can be baked into a game, but it shouldn't be in the rules. It should definitely be up to the groups in question And if somebody in a group is feeling uncomfortable with the way a GM is handling neurodivergence or mental illness, tell them. Just tell them. You're making me uncomfortable. You may not have to do it in the game session, maybe you talk to them after. But maybe in that moment you need to tell them, you need to stop this. Or just get up and walk out. Make it very clear that you're not comfortable with how they're handling their portrayal of neurodivergence or mental illness. Because it's a delicate task. And if we don't do it well, we should either not engage in it, or we should learn from folks who can teach us. You want to have an understanding of how the world is perceived by a neurodivergent person, why don't you talk to a neurodivergent person? You want to know how the world is dealt with when a person has mental illness and you yourself don't have a mental illness? Talk to someone who does. They will tell you, quite possibly ad nauseum. But listen and learn. And don't bake these kind of things into your game.